Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. The talk today, which I'm going to present, is titled The Word of COVID-19 and the Law of Requital. Now, before I go to the outline of the presentation, I would like to share some of the verses. The first verse is 21:16. Not for sport did we create the heavens and the earth and all that is between. The Quran has declared that this universe has a purpose, and those who think that it has no purpose, they are mistaken. The second verse is that if it had been our wish to take a pastime, we should surely have taken it from the things nearest to us if we should do such a thing. And that is that Allah did not create it without a purpose. And everything which is created by Allah has a purpose. And over here, it reinforces the same point which is in the previous verse. And the words used here are laibin and lahwan. And both these words relate to something being done but without a purpose. Like if we are thinking that there is a water over here at one place and we keep digging, and if there is no water, that will fall under this, that we did a lot of work but it went wasted. So the universe has been created for a specific purpose. And over here, the third verse, I have quoted it from Surah Yusuf, which says that thus did we establish Yusuf in the land with power to take possession therein as when or where he pleased. We do not let the reward of those go waste who do balanced deeds. So the Quran declares a principle here that if you do good, you will get good results, because this is a word which is based on human deeds and human actions and human thoughts. Hence, if we do good, the results must come before us right in this world. And the last is Wala ajrul akhirate khairul lazina amanu wa kanu yattaqun, and verily the reward of the hereafter is the best for those who have iman and are muttaqeen. Over here, Quran points to this fact here when it says akhirah means that tomorrow is an akhirah of today. So if we are doing good today, then the good results will follow soon after that. So hereafter does not start after our death, it starts right here in this life. The next verse is, which says that after quoting various people, Quran says like people of Noah, Ad, Thamud, Ibrahim and other inhabitants whose cities were overthrown. And what Quran states over here is that the messengers came to them with clear signs. And it is not Allah who does injustice to them, but they do injustice to their own selves. So this is something which we should keep it in mind. فَمَا كَانَ اللَّهُ لِيَظْلِمَهُمْ وَلَكِنْ كَانُوا أَنفُسَهُمْ يَظْلِمُونَ. That people do injustice to themselves. Allah does not do injustice to human beings. So if we get bad results in this life, we should look for causes, that where have we gone wrong. So this is another principle which Quran gives in terms of studying the human world and the human life on this planet. Then the Quran says, ذَلِكَ أَنْ لَمْ يَكُنْ رَبُّكَ مُهْلِكَ الْقُرَى بِظُلْمٍ وَأَهْلُهَا غَافِلُونَ. That Allah does not destroy any people. That the law is that the people don't get destroyed unless they have been warned. And this warning comes through two ways. One is that through the messengers of Allah are human beings. Human beings also warn each other. And second is that when we do wrong, the wrong results indicate to us that we have done wrong. For example, if I put my finger in fire, it will burn. And that will indicate, that will serve as a warning not to go near the fire. Similarly, if we do wrong in this society, in our world with each other, then that will have wrong consequences. And that should also serve as a warning. And particularly this thing is very much visible in collective actions of countries and nations and people and societies. The next is, which proves another principle, that it is not the majority which is an authority. The authority is Allah's laws and values. If you were to follow the majority and the word, they will lead you away from the path of Allah. They follow nothing but conjecture. They do nothing but lie. So saying this, that in a democracy, majority, if majority makes a decision, that somehow becomes the correct decision, the Quran over here nullifies it. The permanent values do not change. Even if the whole world says that the sun is not shining and it is night, it is still, sun will still be shining and it will not be night. And of course, vice versa. So what Quran has given over here as a principle is that do not follow the majority or conform to the majority, but to look at the truth as it is. So the Quran gives us the permanent values as al-Haqq, which do not change. And if we go against those values, then we are going to suffer in this life. This presentation covers the word of today very briefly because we want to see where we stand in this word as far as the collective actions of human beings are concerned. Setting the scene by the Quran, the law of requital and its functioning, what are the possibilities for the future, that is different scenarios from the Quran, COVID-19 and beyond, and what should TOLU-E-ISLAM do, and finally there will be some conclusions. What is the word of today? Various political systems to elect representatives to make laws and to rule. In democracy, people elect their representatives to rule over them. The question is, why do we wish to be ruled by other human beings? That's a very important question, that why do we want to be ruled by other human beings? But being ruled by other human beings is slavery, and the Quran is against it. So presently, nowhere in the world there is any system in which human beings are treated equal to each other. These laws change from country to country because they are man-made laws, and man-made laws follow human wishes. And in fact, these laws are at times different even within the same country. For example, in England, Scotland, and Wales, Northern Ireland, there are 4 different set of laws. 50 states in the US have different laws. It is a federal system. Why the same human being is subjected to different man-made laws? That is another important question, that the same human beings, once he travels from one part of the world to the other part of the world, he's subjected to different laws. And according to the Quran, this is a gross injustice. The world around us is created by the human intellect alone. The human intellect follows human desires and emotions. Can human intellect create a better world than this? The answer you will get is no, it cannot create anything better than this, because the same human beings, they who are at the top or at the bottom, particularly at the top, the rich and elite, they acquire power not to share it with others, but to rule others. And that rule is through their desires and emotions. Then is rich and elite in the world possess most of the wealth in the world, while most humanity cannot adequately meet even their basic needs. Why do people at the top not like to share their wealth with the majority? This is an important question which we should look for an answer. And this is something which is inbuilt by default in human beings, and human beings have to go against it. And the only way they can go against it when they come to the permanent values of the Quran. Next is the majority of human beings live their life on this assumption: life ends with death. The possibility of hereafter never comes into it. Definition of success in this life is all but material gains. And we can check it out by asking each other. So life ends with death. So everyone is trying to gather as much possible, within their means before they die. And that is why you will hear this phrase, oh, this is the only life I have. All powerful elite do not think they are accountable for their conduct to any higher authority. They make laws which favor them to accumulate more power and wealth. Wars and conflicts are created in the world by the powerful because those in power do not think they can be held accountable for what they do, and all organs of power are employed to justify these, to manipulate public opinion. And it's interesting that why do they manipulate public opinion? Because public is in majority and they are fearful of the public reaction. This means public does hold some semblance of power. And next is every nation has its own relative values. The UN is controlled by the five most powerful. The rest just follow them. Is it meant to continue like this? This is an important question. Is this world has no purpose? As at the beginning, I quoted two verses which said, no, this universe, this world has a purpose. And the next is the capitalist system functions on the value. The reward is for the capital and the richest nations by the work of poor nations. For example, with quantitative easing, the work of billions of people, workers is bought with a stroke of the keyboard. Is it meant to be like this? Is this the purpose of the human being who is declared worthy of respect and dignity as being human? Now, this is from the Quran. The currency of the rich nations hardly ever devalues, while the currencies of the poor countries keep devaluing continuously. The same is the state of the stock markets. How can poor countries escape it? Next is there are regime changes, foreign sponsored civil wars and conflicts, election manipulation, political bribery, economic hitmen, opinion manipulation through media, diplomatic coups, etc. Is this the way our life is meant to be as human beings? Now, this is something which we should think very carefully and very reflectively and ponder over it profoundly. That is this the purpose of life? Just eat, drink, get exploited, go to sleep, produce few children, and then die. Are we comfortable with this world and do not see any problem for us or our children or other fellow human beings? Then really the Quran is not for us. We should select some suitable religion for us which can give us some emotive satisfaction of the hereafter. Otherwise, we can live this life well and wait for the paradise of that particular religion. Now, we go to the next one, and online schematic. Now, if we look at the history of the recent history of the world, in the 17th century, industrialization and colonization had started or was in progress, and a common man was getting exploited in all countries. The world has seen progress in science and technology. However, common man continues to be subjected to slavery and exploitation. In 18th to 20th centuries witnessed continuation of exploitation at an ever larger scale, and the techniques and methods became more sophisticated and subtle. In order to hide true intentions, as the print and wireless media became more common, World War I to World War II, then military industrial complex intelligence services became more entrenched. And this led to more wars, more exploitation, regime changes, leading to a greater domination by the capitalist system, i.e. controlled by the rich and powerful. And then now is the state in 21st century. As the power accumulates at the top, it desires more power, and within this concentration of power at the top lies its downfall, according to the Quran. This is the story of Pharaoh and his cohorts, which is referred in the Quran. 21st century has seen this rise in power to its highest level so far. New World Order, Great Reset, these are the terms being used nowadays. Media empires, IMF, World Bank, World Economic Forum, and there are numerous other agencies at the top who are in full control of the world. And these are kept distributed so that the common public does not see the truth of each one of them. They are so dispersed that it's difficult to think them all working together for one purpose, and that is to control the common man and keep him slave. If the Quran claims itself to be the book of Allah, we need to examine it to see what it says about the state of our world, and this is the way it is from bottom to up. And then is, while all this is taking place in the world and is being witnessed by Muslims, inverted commas, who have the Quran, they are busy in performing their rituals with full devotion and sincerity under their 5 pillars of Islam. The question before us is it meant to go on like this, or there is an alternative to it? Then the next question is, what is that alternative? The power structure in the human world. There are common human beings at the bottom, which includes middle class, lower class, poor, etc. across the world, and they are presently 7 billion plus. And then these are the pharaohs of the world who hold the power in their hands. And it is a hierarchical structure which starts from the top, superpower, and then it goes down to the poorest country and their leaders. Powerful elite and their cohorts, Pharaoh plus Haman plus Karun, as referred in the Quran. And most of the interaction is taking place here. People cannot see beyond this. And then there is Allah, the creator and provider of guidance, which is through the Quran. And He knows the plight of these people, and He knows these as well. Now, the next question is that can this class over here approach Allah directly, leaving these, bypassing this lot over here? And that is something we will look at in different scenarios. Now, the Quran over here states, لَقَدْ أَنزَلْنَا عَلَيْكُمْ كِتَابٌ فِيهِ ذِكْرُكُمْ أَفَلَا تَعْقِلُونَ. We have revealed a book in which is your mention. Will you then not make use of your intellect? So the Quran wants us to use our intellect, and to use that intellect, it has given us the book. And the book, throughout the Quran, it is repeatedly asking us to use intellect, because without using the intellect, we cannot understand the Quran. It needs actually very deep reflection. We have to analyze every verse in detail and then see the context. Then it says, لَجُنْزِرَ مَنْ كَانَ حَيٌّ وَيَحِقُّ الْقَوْلُ عَلَى الْكَافِرِينَ. A warning for those who are alive, and a charge may be proved against those who deny it, who reject it. So over here, Quran is saying that it is a warning for those who wish to be alive. So it is a very, very extremely serious book who draws our attention to the serious issues of life. And then over here, it gives the law of requital. وَخَلَقَ اللَّهُ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضَ بِالْحَقِّ وَلِتُجْزَى كُلُّ نَفْسٍ بِمَا كَسَبَتْ وَهُمْ لَا يُظْلَمُونَ. This is a verse which we should remember, because this is what the purpose of human creation is. Allah created the heavens and the earth as Haqq. Haqq means something which is a reality, which is a fact. And what is that fact? That each self is accountable for what it has earned in this life. And since he has a self, hence that self changes in direct proportion to what he or she does in this life. And it is so precise that none of them can be treated unjustly. But if we can also look at it, that if this self does the right things, then it will understand that the whole system of the universe has been created with a purpose. And we are the ones. If there were no human beings around in this world, this universe was meaningless. It is we human beings for whom this world has been created, and we give a meaning to this universe and to this world. And we are the ones who are creating on this world. So we are creators. We are creators. We don't create from nothing, but what all has already been provided, we create from that, and that is how we make our life over here bearable and convenient. And then it says that soon will we show them our signs in the outer world and in their own selves, until it becomes manifest to them that this is Haqq. Remember, this is Haqq again, and over here the word Haqq is used. Is it not enough that your Rabb does witness all things? Over here the Quran very clearly states to us that if you open your eyes and you observe and you look for evidence, you will see that whatever has been given in the Quran is Haqq, and it is proving correct as the discoveries are taking place in this world. So important thing is that we should move fast and find out and discover the outer world as well as our own psyche, and take benefit out of it. So Quran is here to give us benefit, to make us free from all the conflicts which human intellect creates in this world. And next is the functioning of the law of requital. First is that the Quran declares this to be the purpose of the human creation, the accountability of a creation who possesses a self, nafs, which has choice and intent. Nafs is impressionable, and human consciousness is the arena for human experiences. So if we look at our inner self, our consciousness, we can see all experiences taking place within this arena. And all our experiences up to a point in time define ourself. Whatever we are becoming, we should try to find it out by looking at the contents of our consciousness. Accountability is linked to the human self through human thoughts, where every deed is preceded by a thought. Then is each nafs or self provided with a physical body and a physical world surrounded by the physically visible universe. This self gives meaning to the universe according to its own outlook. There is an outer reality and we create our own reality as we live our life. The Quran asks us to create this inner reality by using the permanent values of the Quran, because the reality created within these values will be different from that reality which is created without these values. Being a social creation, each self or nafs wishes to interact with others, and this leads to cause and effect and action around the world. This helps create a very dynamic world. Human desires and emotions have a certain default status which has created a hierarchical structure in the human world and is managed by the human intellect. The Quran wants a very flat structure, that at the top, the values of the Quran to be followed, which give us the maximum freedom. No human being can enjoy that freedom without the values of the Quran. It's a very flat structure because all human beings are equal. No human being has a right to subjugate another human being, to make him obey his laws. We are all supposed to follow the values of the Quran and the laws which are given by the Quran. And within that, if we live our life, this will be the happiest life, free from fear and grief. Next is the law keeps working even if we are not aware of it. However, some part of it is quoted in our life. For example, people generally know there is a word used, karma, Murphy's law, what goes around comes around, what we sow, so shall we reap, the history repeats itself. But somehow we miss this point that this law is working all the time in our life and it is shaping our own inner self, shaping our own inner reality on a continuous basis. The higher echelon in every nation are aware of the consequences of their actions on general public. However, they ignore these thinking. It may not happen during their time in power. Hitler never thought he will have to commit suicide one day. Human beings, because of a strong sense of I, do not feel the possibility of their own death. The strength of desires and the power associated with wealth and status that keeps them away from the possibility of death. Greater the power and wealth, less one is conscious of the law of requital and death. And then is understanding the functioning of the law of requital serves as a force multiplier, as this helps to optimize our efforts by understanding the consequences of our thoughts and deeds. This is why the Quran has put repeated emphasis on Amal-e Saleh. Amal-e Saleh means the deeds, the righteous deeds according to the Quran, not of our own thinking, what we consider is right within the relative values. These are those deeds which the Quran has put forward, for example, in verse 177, chapter 2. Now, let us look at some of the scenarios which are given in the Quran regarding regarding the fall of nations and people. The first one is Alam tara ila allazina baddalu ni'matallahi kufran wa ahallu qawmahum dar al-bawar. Have you not turned your vision to those who have changed the favor of Allah into kufr and caused their people to descend into the house of perdition? Kufr in the Quranic terms means to reject the truth, to transgress from the truth, and to rebel against the truth, or to cover up the Haqq, or to cover up the truth. So over here, Quran says that to people, have you not turned your vision, or have you not seen? So it is evidence-based that those leaders who took their people into Dar al-Bawar or to a place where there was no buyer to buy their products. And then it says, Jahannama yaslawnaha wa bi'sal qarar. They took them to Jahannam where there is stagnancy, there is inertia, there is no movement, and the people cannot go forward. And they will burn therein, an evil place to stay in. Bi'sal qarar means a place where they are going to stay in because of their own ill deeds. There are two roots used here. Over here, al-Bawar, BWR, is untillable land, uninhabited land, some deeds which go wasted, a place where there is none to buy a product, a place of ruin. The meaning will be that these leaders led their nation in that marketplace where there is none to buy their product. If we look at the word of COVID-19, you will see that something like these conditions are appearing on the horizon. And QRR is qarar, means something to stay in one place or the place where a thing stops. Lowland, where water collects. Mustaqar, every deed has a result or an effect, i.e. every event leads to a certain point where it ends up. So if we look at the word of 2019 and all the activity which was taking place under the capitalist system, all has more or less come to a fairly standstill position. Now the second scenario is scenario 2. Over here the Quran says, وَكَمْ قَسَمْنَا مِنْ قَرْيَةٍ كَانَتْ ظَالِمَةً وَأَنشَأْنَا بَعْدَهَا قَوْمًا آخَرِينَ. How many were the people we utterly destroyed because of their injustices? See, the word used is zulm. Zulm means that if something has to be at some place and it has been moved. For example, if a human being is supposed to be respected and given dignity, and if we do not give that, then that is a zulm, that is an injustice. And it's a gross injustice. And setting up in their places their peoples. In the world, there is a continuous changes taking place. In any case, one set of people are dying and leaving this life, and the new people are born and they take their place. But then Quran also says that one nation takes the place of another nation. Now, yet when they felt our punishment, they tried to flee from it. So over here, Quran explains a law for fall of nations, that people, when they start doing injustice and they cross a minimum threshold level, then the results of their deeds, which were already building up but were invisible, they arrive, and they arrive as a punishment, whereas those are actually the consequences of their own deeds. And then it says, flee not, but return to the good things and to your homes in order that you may be questioned. Now, this is a very interesting situation where Quran says that you kept doing wrong and injustices in the world, and you thought that there is no one to question you. And then these deeds appeared, which were invisible, and now they became visible. And when they become visible, then you will realize that this is a time where you have to bear the consequences of your past. And then what happened was, Qalu ya walana inna kunna zalimin. Of course, these things take time. The results do not build up in one day. It takes years to build up the bad results of our consequences. The cancer does not arrive in one day. It is years and years. The way we live our life, that question is building, the cancer is building up within our body, and then it starts showing its signs. And they said, woe to us, we were indeed unjust. We should look for these signs in present day's world. In my view and understanding, if this is the scenario which is applicable today, in 2 to 5 years, these things will come before us. And then and that cry of theirs ceased not till we made them as a field that is mown down, as ashes, silent and quenched. And then these nations are replaced, and in their place other people come in. Then the scenario 3 is, this is another very interesting scenario which Quran has given in 16th chapter. One day every self will come up struggling for itself, and every self will be recompensed for all its deeds, and none will be treated unjustly. Also see the verse which I have quoted earlier, the Law of Requital. And over here, this is an individual state, that each human being is accountable for his or her deeds. And all these deeds then build up over a period of time, and the results can show up right in this life. And then we realize that how much wrong we have done. In any case, all of us have to die and go to the next life. The Quran presents the next life as a fact. It says that the next life is a fact at the level of our I, our me, and our consciousness. And this is a big subject which we will discuss in another presentation. And then Quran says Allah gives a parable, a city enjoying peace and contentment with sustenance from every place, but displaced kuffar for the bounties of Allah. So Allah made it experience hunger and fear like a war garment, like the garment we put on. Because of what they fabricated, or over here is what they coined or what they built with their own hands. So it is important that whatever we are doing in this life, we should be very, very conscious of it, whether it is meeting the parameters laid down by the permanent values, or is it following our desires. And then it says that it was not that these people were not warned. There were people over there who warned them, and there came to them a messenger from among themselves, but they falsified him. So the wrath seized them in the middle of their injustices. People do warn people in the world. For example, Julian Assange warned through his WikiLeaks, and see what has happened to him. And people think that by silencing him, the truth will be hidden. The truth will never be hidden. The law of requital is working all the time. So our deeds will catch up at some point in time. And then people will realize that what he said, what he disclosed or discovered and let the public know across the world was truth. And then the next scenario is, before you, we sent messengers to many nations, and we afflicted with suffering and adversity that they might learn humility. We should remember here that the Quran relates all human actions, many of human actions, to Allah Himself. But whatever happens in this life is according to these laws of rise and fall of nations and according to the law of requital. So when something happens according to the law of requital, Allah says that I did it. But in fact, it is the human beings who do harm to themselves. So over here, another scenario is painted that messengers were sent and people were suffering at that time, and they were told that your wrong deeds are giving you all these adverse reactions and causing you ruin. And when the suffering reached them from us, why they then did they not learn humility? So when a suffering comes, people are required to reflect on it, that what wrong we are doing, and that is why we are suffering. And their hearts became even more harder, that instead they look for it and analyze their own weaknesses and their own ruin. They said, oh no, this will all disappear. And Satan made their doings seem alluring to them. Satan over here means their own desires, their own emotions, their own intellect. And then what happened was, but when they forgot the warning they had received, we opened to them the gates of all things, until in the middle of their enjoyment, on sudden we called to account, when lo, they were plunged in despair. This is very interesting over here. The Quran says that they fall into, human beings very quickly fall into despair, those who do not follow the permanent values, because they think that all these conveniences of life which they lost because of through their own hands, through their own deeds, somehow have appeared unjustly on them. Whereas the fact is that these people do harm to themselves, and these sufferings don't come in one day, these take time. And the next one is, this is very important, we have to watch for it. Of the unjust, the last remnant was severed. Hamd be to Rabbil Alameen. Over here, the Quran says their roots were cut. The people who were doing injustice and were continuing to do injustice, and despite warnings, they did not stop, then ultimately their roots are severed. And then the next verse is, next scenario is, which is scenario 5. Over here, Quran says, say he has power to send calamities on you from above and below, or to cover you with confusion and party strife, giving you a taste of mutual vengeance, each from other. See how we explain the science by various ways that they may understand. Now, this is happening right in front of us. In the name of democracy, there are parties, and they are all fighting with each other and quarreling with each other, and there are differences of opinion. There's the whole, every country is polarized, and it is all happening because they assume that the life will end with death. There is no possibility of life going beyond death. They don't think they are all accountable for that, and despite all this deviance coming among them, they don't pause and reflect. So see here, giving you a taste of mutual vengeance. Now this is happening virtually in every country, and we'll see how it develops. Next is, but your people reject this, though it is the Haqq, say not mine is the responsibility for arranging your affairs. So people who are righteous and people who are watching it without getting involved into it should realize that it is not their responsibility. All they can do is to warn these people and then move away and tell them that your path is wrong and we are not going to follow that path. And then is for every message is a limit of time and soon shall you know it. The interesting thing is under COVID-19, it looks as if the law of requital has speeded up. It has gone into an exponential drive. So we'll see how things happen. So over here, the law is that for every, the way human beings behave, then there is a cutoff point. And after that, then no respite is given. And then is thus, then now we come to the next scenario, which is the last one I have selected from the Quran. And it's quite interesting. Over here it says, nor can you be a guide to the blind to prevent from straying. So human beings are responsible for their own choices and for their own decisions. Only those will you get to listen who have Iman in our signs and they will bow in Islam. Iman over here is not a belief system. It is a conviction based on the values of the Quran. And the Quran gives details of the constituents of Iman, for example, in verse 177, chapter 2. And it's important to understand that it is not a religious belief system. It has to be developed as a conviction over a period of time through our observation, and it is evidence-based. And the Quran has given details of this. And when the word is fulfilled against them, we shall produce from the earth a dabba, to surgically deal with them, for that mankind did not have certainty in our signs. Over here, the Quran says that it is through their own deeds that the results appear. Daba is a crawling, it's metaphorical over here, that it is like a crawling animal or something which is living, and it gradually shows up. So gradually the results show up, and one nation is then deals with another nation. So this scenario is also one can see developing in front of us. And then is one day we shall gather together from every people a troop of those who reject our signs, and they shall be kept in ranks. Now over here, this translation is kept in ranks, whereas the word root used over here is mutual confrontation, and thus it leads to weakening and stoppage of chaos. What is happening is that the nations, they harm themselves through mutual fighting and division and polarization, and then another nation comes and replaces them. And over here, we should keep it in mind that the next nation which is replacing may not have as good values, better values than the nation they are replacing. If there is no righteous people in the world, then one bad nation will replace another bad nation. And this is given in the next verse. Thus do we make the zalimin turn to each other because of what they do. So it is that they become friends of each other. So unjust become friends of unjust, and that is how the fight goes on in the world. And of course, the common humanity keeps suffering. Now, COVID-19 and beyond. COVID-19, whether it is man-made or natural virus, the jury is out. We don't know. But it makes no difference, because the effects appearing around us are the same. Both are outside the control of most human beings. And some say there is a gain of function in the virus. Nothing is known about its origin officially, except speculative origin in China. Pandemic has been predicted at least few years prior to 2020. Can we spot signs of its being pandemic? Hard to say, as info not yet available. Is it possible nations can plan something to self-harm to gain long-term objectives? Yes, because when people become rich at the top, it is a self-harm, because people at the lower ladder of a lower class in any country, they go poor. So they are being harmed. So this notion that people will at the top will not self-harm, this is not true. We witness it in the world. Agenda 21 and the year 2021, this is also being mentioned in the media or alternative media. Events are changing the world. In what way, we don't know. There is a talk of new world order, a great reset, but we don't know. The working of the law of requital, for example, study of events and their causes and effects. 9/11, we know what what are the different scenarios being painted about 9/11. There is, of course, an official version. False flag events have taken place in the world. Wars in the Middle East are deliberately created. We all know the purpose and the aim behind it. Concentration of wealth at the top, like 1%, they hold most of the money in the world, while the rest of the world, most of the world is suffering from poverty. There is an increase in poverty and no future for the poor as humans, even in this world. Remember, we should keep it in mind that all these human beings are equal like any other human being in the world, and they are all created equal. In fact, the Constitution of the US states that all men are created equal. If they are all created equal, why are they treated unequally? So that is the important question. Obviously, those who treat them unequally do not believe in that statement, and that is a statement which is meaningless if we say all men are created equal and then we do injustice against them. So what is coming next? Now, first is there is one thing definite, that the post-COVID-19 world is going to be quite different, say in 2 to 5 years. Economic downturn is being predicted. Can all this quantitative easing lead to some depression? This is one possibility. Quran has pointed it to that economic downfall in terms of hunger does then appear through human hands. Businesses have been adversely affected, especially in the West. Small businesses are struggling. Fear and huzn is likely to increase as job losses and lockdowns are affecting both physically as well as psychologically. Remember, most assume life ends with death, so no hope of the hereafter. So death in itself creates a lot of huzn, a lot of grief and fear. But then these man-made events have also created a lot of fear and huzn. And poor people in the world where the majority lives, they in any case live under fear and huzn all their life. Old people are living in fear and isolation. People in rich countries have money but cannot spend it. This causes frustration and helplessness. And this is called iblisiyat. That is, the hopelessness comes and sets in. And that we should remember that negative emotions do affect our psyche. We cannot escape it because everything, the way we think, affects us. Unexpected deaths due to COVID-19 has affected thousands of families, so fear and uncertainty have multiplied. Possibility of continuing wars on large scale will become difficult. Weaker nations, if get good leaders, can rise in the aftermath of this pandemic. This is just an assumption, a possibility. All scenarios in some shape are possible. The 6 scenarios which I have quoted from the Quran, each one of them is a possibility. We should watch out for the signs. For example, internal strife, protests, increase in crime, police state actions, curtailment of more freedoms, mass surveillance, curfews, movement curtailment, confinements, suspension of internet and social media, anti-immigrant movements. All these is a possibility. All of these can come together. All of these can peak at some point in time. Now, what should TOLU-E-ISLAM do? Though this is an important question for those who think they are trying to understand the Quran. First is, all members should know that the law of requital is working and is speeding up due to the pandemic. Come closer and hold to the rope of Allah very firmly and tightly as noted in 3103. Strengthen our iman and self through additional education and training. For example, this seminar, get together and active participation. This is important because the thing is, if we know law of requital is working and that confirms what is given in the Quran, then that means if we stay within those permanent values and understand them very well, then we know what is coming next. And by seeing the signs, we can always take precautions. We at the same time, we need to tell others as well. Acquire as much latest information through alternative news channels while keeping a critical eye on the official channels like BBC, CNN, or Fox News, RT, and all these outlets across the world, which give us a certain viewpoint. We should try to look at an alternative viewpoint as well. Carefully see any pattern developing in the events around us. If it is heading towards a great reset, then we will soon see a trend developing. According to the law of requital, nothing remains hidden for long. If it is too obvious, then it is not right. Bottom line is that Iblis which is the hopelessness side, and shaitan is the impulsive side or emotional side, is intensely busy, and we need to be busier than him. Watch and listen with suspicion. Remember, Iblis is not our friend. Do not dismiss any info as a conspiracy. One side's conspiracy is an info for the other side. Never assume governments do not harm their own people. They do, for example, when they make rich richer. So whatever government is trying to tell us across the world, we should listen to it and see how much of it is truth. And it's better to be skeptical than to accept it as a whole truth. And similarly, we should also listen to alternative point of views and then make up our own mind. Make all efforts to remain abreast so that we are not caught unaware. Do a lot more amale saleh. Now, this is important, that ultimately there is a life hereafter to come, and we all are going to die. It doesn't matter when we die and leave this life. It is our self which is going to go to the next life, and that self, after acquiring iman. So iman is a must, and then doing those righteous deeds which the Quran has explained in detail. And this we should keep doing even in the worst of the circumstances. This will help understand the issues of the world in which we live. Because when we help poor, when we help fellow human beings who are equal and made poor because of the wrong system, we understand their problems and we strive harder to change the system. And this will strengthen ourselves for the system of deen. It's not an option, but a must. And finally, be prepared to move. And over here, I have quoted few verses. First verse is the one which I have quoted, verbally, and it is not bare. Bare means the eminence of ourself, the loftiness of ourself, the wider horizon of our consciousness. We cannot get it by facing east or west through rituals, but we will get it. This bare we will get it by acquiring iman in Allah. The hereafter, see, the hereafter is very much part of it. It's an intrinsic part of it, because the Quran presents hereafter as a reality. And I will cover it in another presentation. And the malaika, which are the forces of nature. These are physical forces as well as our psychic forces. And we can call them cosmological forces as well, which are still, some of them are still not known, yet to be discovered. And the book, which is the revelation, the Quran, and the Anbiya, the messengers of Allah who brought that book. So these five are important elements of Iman. And then to give of your possessions out of love for Him, or love for the wealth. So both are applicable here, that if we have a love for the wealth, we should spend it on others. And if we spend it on others, that is how we will strengthen our Iman. And they are the ones who become then truthful and muttaqeen. So it is something to do rather than just thinking and using words and doing nothing. And the Quran very clearly says, Kullu nafsin zaikatul maut, that every self is going to experience death. See how Quran has separated our psyche from our physical self. This physical self belongs to the physical world. Our body has a finite time, so is the universe in the world has a finite ending. So this universe which we see around us is going to end up at some point in time in the future. But the day I die, that is the end of my world as far as this universe is concerned. So we should keep it in mind and keep reminding ourselves that we have a finite time in this life. And the reality which we create within ourselves, that is something which is going to go forward. And we should be aware of it. And by using the Quranic criterion, we can be extremely well aware of it. And then before we conclude, the Quran says, "O you who have acquired Iman, if you will help Allah, He will help you and plant your feet firmly." This is an extremely important psychological principle which the Quran has given us. And this becomes manifest itself. It manifests itself if we follow this path after acquiring Iman. And as we strengthen our Iman and ourselves through righteous deeds, this thing starts manifesting itself. Next is, if any do seek power, to Allah belong all power, to Him mount of words of purity. It is He who exalts each of Amal Saleh. Those that lay plots of evil, for them is a penalty terrible, and plotting of such will be void. So for these, I presented six scenarios, but the first one, I will just finally say that whole power is in the hands of Allah, because Allah is Allah of this world as well as of the universe. It is wrong on our part to assume that He has detached Himself and He has no role to play. The Quran tells us that He is very much involved in the affairs of this world, and that is why He says, I am with you wherever you are. But the important thing is for us to do something before we seek His help. So that is something we need to understand. And those are these Amal Saleh, the righteous deeds as defined by the Quran, not by the relative values, but by the permanent values of the Quran. And that is how we can seek His help in this world. And finally, compare the word of 2019, December 2, with the word in February 2021, and the difference is very clear. It has changed with human freedoms curtailed even in those regions which were relatively more prosperous and developed as compared to the underdeveloped and poor regions. There appears to be a calm and deliberate planning going on at the top of the powerful nations with no signs of panic. For example, quantitative easing being practiced freely, businesses are closing, airlines operation is grossly restricted, interference in poor nations continue unabated, poor continue to get poorer, refugees in Syria, Afghanistan, Yemen, Burma, Bangladesh, Venezuela, Haiti, Africa, everywhere across the world, wherever they are. They continue to be homeless and praying to Allah as noted in the Quran. If it has gone out of human hands, i.e. the rich and powerful, then what is the future shape it is going to take is anyone's guess. But those six scenarios give us some clues. Being Quranic, we need to do what we are meant to do while observing closely and intently on the world events. Allah does carry out His plan, even if non-Quranic people hate His planning. The question asks us, are we part of His plan? And thank you very much.